will you be able to see a screen here of a globe? Yeah, so just want to give a sense of where we are. As a background, I grew up in Hong Kong, and I grew up in Hong Kong all my life. And so to me, living in a city is kind of my native, um, yeah, my native environment. I'm very comfortable in a city. And I assume that the rest of the world is like Hong Kong, like very dense, that you can flag down any cab anywhere, until I left for my college. And I studied in Brown University in the US. In fact, it's in the smallest state in the US called Rhode Island. And I studied environmental science when I was at Brown in combination with economics. And so throughout my time at Brown, I joined different classes. And one of the most interesting classes that I've taken is a class with scholars from around the world. And one of the scholars is from India. And, uh, and he is a researcher actually in India from the state of Kerala. And so I applied in my second year in my uni to kind of go to do research project with him. And so I flew from Hong Kong to India, the red dot that you see on the map. And in that first summer, I realized a number of things. First, it's very beautiful places. So Kerala is a place full of coconut trees. It's known as the backwaters of India. And so it has very beautiful canals. But at the same time, because of human construction, they have constructed a water dam. And that water dam kind of prevented the natural water flow from the ocean into the backwaters. And so what happened is the water becomes stagnant pool of water where all the agricultural waste, including fertilizers, pesticides, is kind of stored in the backwaters. And because it's also below sea level, aside from using the canal water, which you can see in this lower left-hand corner, there's really no alternative sources of groundwater for use. And so the researcher asked me, hey, so will you look into this problem? And so this was me back in my uni days in my second year. You can see that I am asking one of the villagers for water samples. And in addition to water samples, I also asked them questions because part of my research are two-pronged. One is collecting water samples to understand how was the water quality from different sources. So canal water, river water, pond water, well water, as well as private water from water tankers. And interestingly, from some rainwater harvesting unit. So I was collecting all these water samples, and I was also asking them questions. So like, oh, where do you get your water from? What do you think about your water? Do you ever get sick from drinking this water? And so it's a pretty interesting and awesome summer. And you can see in the top left-hand corner, that was my research partner, one of the scholars in a local university, together with one of the interviewer, who is a woman villager in the village. I still remember the village name is called Acumen. And in this lower right-hand picture, you can see that in this back, it's very interesting. It's not very obvious, but you can see that they have actually made their own rainwater harvesting structure. It's a blue top, and then they tied it in the four corners, so it's slanted, and then it goes down into a bucket. And so this is how they store water from the rainy season. It's pretty awesome in the sense that they have their own way of collecting rainwater. And then we are collecting samples from these rainwater harvesting simple unit. And after collecting all these rainwater harvesting sample, we realized that there is a very interesting result in a sense that out of all the water sources, rainwater is the cleanest water. the count of E. coli in rainwater is 0. Versus when we compare the water quality from different sources, the canal water, pond water, well water, even from the private supplier, the water tanker, the E. coli level are at 1,000 to 10,000 levels. So every milligram of water, you can found over 10,000 counts of E. coli in some of the canal water. And for your information, E. coli is a representation of fecal contamination, especially from mammals like human. And so the water quality is pretty bad. And I still remember when we talked to the villagers, one of the villagers asked us, oh, like, you guys are not the first researcher to come to this village and ask us questions about our water quality. In fact, I think you guys are maybe the 4th or the 5th team of researchers to come and ask us questions. But interestingly, every time after we have finished the interview, we're not sure what the result is. Like, we're not sure, you know, what the research team has found, and what is the solution, what is the next step. They also told us how difficult it is to collect water, because women like this lady, they will have to walk about half an hour to the intersection of the village road in order to collect water and buy water from the private vendor, and then walk 30 minutes back. So it takes them about 1 hour every day carrying very heavy load of water, usually on top of their head. And so they're pretty curious and in some ways also frustrated. What is the research result, right? How will that actually help them? And so me and my partner researcher, we actually went back to the village. I still remember we bring our projector, we also bring a generator, and then we set up a presentation at the end of a tent. And we presented them back. We actually showed them the graph of the E. coli count and compared the different water sources. And then we also told them, hey, we realized that rainwater is the cleanest source of water. There are 0 E. coli. In terms of other physical contaminants like nitrogen or phosphate counts, it's also the lowest, it's also the cleanest. And so one of the women villagers at the end of the crowd actually stood up and raised her hand and asked me, okay, now that we know rainwater is a really great source of water, so what will you do? What is the next step? And so me and my researcher went to meet with the local government official called the Panchayat. And so we went to the Panchayat the next day, and we also showed them the result that were found, that we identified rainwater harvesting as a very clean alternative source of water. So the Panchayat officer is like, oh, that's great. We are very pleased to hear that there's scientific results supporting this research, and we'll look into it. So fast forward about a year, I kept in touch with my local research partner called Silas right here. He said, hey, there isn't actually much progress in terms of rainwater harvesting in the village. They're really, we haven't heard anything. And so me and my partner was brainstorming, also, can we do something actually? Can we try out something? And so together with Engineers Without Borders and together with the local women self-help group and the villagers, we started to design a community rainwater harvesting structure. And so here is actually the construction photo of the first community rainwater harvesting structure that we have designed. And you can see that this is actually one of the canals, but then we blocked off one end and we blocked off the other end as well using temporary bamboo structure. And the design is as a half submersive rainwater harvesting structure. So half of the tank will be in this ground as a foundation to support the rainwater harvesting tank, because you can imagine with water storing in the tank, it becomes pretty heavy. So using the ground as a supporting structure can reduce the construction cost as well as the construction material. And it's not shown in this picture, but there's actually a house in the angle that I'm taking this picture. There's a house next to this canal in the back. And so we are using that house as a catchment area. So we lined up pipe around the rooftop to channel water to direct that into the rainwater harvesting tank. And the next picture shows the construction progress. This is in the middle of the construction. You can see that we have lined half of the canal already with cement. And this is a reinforced concrete structure. So we are putting in iron rebar into it. And we are also tying the knots together. So this become a reinforced iron structure. And we then overlay another layer of cement on top. And actually everyone participates in the construction of this community rainwater harvesting structure. In the picture on the right-hand side, you can see women of the local self-help group. They help to carry the gravels from the village road to the construction site. And it was such a, I still remember it was such a fun time. Everyone works really hard. But it's also very joyful at the same time because it's a community effort, and it's kind of a solution that we come up with together in collaboration with the Women's Health Help Group, with the university research effort, and with the engineers, and with the local mason designing the structure together. And so this, on top of this two picture, it's the finished product of the community rainwater harvesting tank. You can see that the local university school principal came over to inaugurate the tank, and fast forward a few years, you know, more engineering students also visited the tank. You can see that the tank have actually a filter on the side. This is a filter where the water will actually go through this quicksand filter before it enters into the tank. The tank can store water that's sufficient for over 20 households. So we've calculated, we quantified the amount of water that each household will need to drink for a drought season, to last them through the drought season. Of course, there is a reasonable amount, and in the sense that each household during the drought season will be able to withdraw a certain amount of water to make sure that everyone gets the fair share of rainwater, and it's also more accessible. So instead of walking half an hour or 1 hour, this tank can serve the household around them easily. And they also form a self-help group, so to kind of maintain the tank. So if there's any damage, this 20 households, they will be the one maintaining it and making sure that it's well taken care of. So on the tank, there is a word. It's very small, so you might not be able to read it, but it's a verse that really motivates me throughout this project. And the verse goes something. It's from 1 John 3:17. The verse goes something along the lines of, "Love should not be just words and talk; it must be in action." In action. So that's why tank was called Rainwater for Humanity, very much inspired by Habitat for Humanity. How can we create something that can solve people's most needed problem? And aside from this tank, we also continue to build more tank after this system. So this is the other tanks that we've built. You can see that on this label, it says rainwater harvest 17,000 liters. Just that I've shown you just now is about 200,000 liters capacity. So it's much bigger than this version. But we've experimented with different versions of rainwater harvesting tank to kind of find the best solution, the right size capacity for the households and the villagers. So I've done this throughout the last 2 years of my last 2 years and my first year after graduation from Brown. And I really see this as one of kind of the model that I'm very inspired by. Is called social enterprise, where you really try to find a solution based on people's need, which solve people's problem. But that there must be a social and a sustainable business model that comes along with it, so that it's not only reliance on charity, but it has a business model. And I would like to segue into some important lessons that I've learned. Is at the beginning, we raise fund for it. So we have online fundraising campaign to fundraise for these rainwater harvesting tank. And then because we aspire to slowly move towards a self-reliance model where each of the household will pay a small water fee. So instead of paying for the private water vendors, they will pay a small fee, just like you and me, a utility bill from as they withdraw water from the water tank. And this small fee will help the movement, Rainwater for Humanity, to continue to replicate this model to build more rainwater harvesting tank for the rest of the community in the region, because water scarcity is a prevalent issue in that region, and simply by fundraising, it's very hard to have a scalable model. And then so we've been pushing really hard to find a sustainable model, and I think that's where we got stuck. It's I realized that's where probably the cultural gap is. When I come in with my model of like, hey, let's do something that's scalable, but we did not get much traction as we proposed this model of like paying a small water fee. We faced quite a lot of resistance from our partner university and also from the local self-help group as well. And so we used up our funding amount to build, I think, 10 rainwater tank or more. I lost track, but we've used up the fund that we've raised, and we're not able to continue this model because we couldn't find a recurring business model that sustains this. And I was reflecting on this experience is how important it is to solve a problem with a sustainable model. And technically, this is proven. We've proven that the water is clean. We've proven that the structure works. And on paper, I even did my senior thesis on this. On paper, when I analyzed the cost benefit of this model, the benefit outweighs the cost, both in the monetary side, in terms of how much they're paying for their private water vendor, in terms of also the time that we save them from traveling, because the time, the 1 hour, the 2 hours time that we save the women in carrying the water, they can use that time to actually generate money by making crafts, by making coils from the coconut rope. And so on paper, it works. But I realized that the hardest thing to change is behavior, is human conceptions, perceptions, and how do we find a business model that works? And so I think that's a question that I leave with you. If you have ideas, if you have suggestions, I'd love to hear from you on this. And so with this in mind, I continued my journey as a young graduate from university, and I moved back to Hong Kong, and I realized that I really need to learn how the world operates, especially how the business side of things operate. And so I then joined a management consulting company, and because I heard that a management consulting company is where people learn about business model, is where people solve business questions. And so I joined one of the management consulting company to work with like global 500, Fortune 500 companies, and solving some of their business models. So pricing strategy, how do you do due diligence on acquisition targets, and how do you kind of source your materials from different sectors, or how do you plan your business units. And so that is kind of the mindset that I have is, hey, I need to learn what's happening in the business world. And I remember that from that experience, one of the key areas that I've learned is the hard skills. in quantification. So we use a lot of business model financial projections to calculate the ROI and to evaluate also the competitive landscape of the solutions. And so I worked in there for about 2.5 years. And then that reached a point when we have to decide on the next step. So in here, you can see a very typical map of a traditional professional career path. So it's very clear. Every 2 years, there will be a promotion cycle, basically. So I was at that 2.5 years point where I faced a decision of whether I should continue or whether I should move to a new field. And I remember sitting there, in the office and just thinking about where do I want to do, what's my calling? And I remember the reason why I entered into management consulting is to learn the business model. And at that point, I have quite a lot of exposure. I think I've worked on over 10 cases, flew to many different countries and gone through some really tough time trying to learn and pick up financial projections and all the quantification methods. And I feel like that's the time for me to take risk, because if I don't take a risk, then I will follow this path and just continue on without pursuing my own interests and my own passions. So after 2.5 years, I decided to resign and I joined continue my path, and I joined another organization. And so that brings me to Ghana. So on this map, you can see Ghana, the red dot. It's a country in West Africa. And so I flew over to Ghana. And what brought me to Ghana is because I joined this organization called Acumen. I'm not sure if you have heard of Acumen before, but Acumen is one of the nonprofit in the US, which I really looked up to. That was the organization when I was trying to learn from when I was building that business model for the Rainwater for Humanity structure. Acumen, in fact, has pioneered the concept of social enterprise and how they also invest in social enterprise as a way to solve much needed social problems. And so I joined them as a global fellow for a year. And part of the program is we will be placed in one of their investment portfolio company. And so I was placed in one of their investments, which is called Water Health International. Very coincidentally, it's also about water. I don't know if it's because if it's because of like some effects from my family, but because my dad also works in water supply, but I never told them. So maybe, I don't know, they'll figure it out or something. So they've placed me in Water Health International, and it's a very interesting model because in this picture, you can see that they have built something called a mini water purification plants. So in any municipal, you will have a massive water purification plants. For example, in Hong Kong, we have a massive water purification plants, which purifies the water before it goes into our water pipe. And so that is how normal cities work. But then in more developing regions like in Ghana or in the headquarters where Water Health International is in India, the centralized model doesn't really work because it's a huge country and a lot of population live in more remote rural suburbs or in slum areas where infrastructure of water pipes simply doesn't work. And even when I was working in Acumen, in the rainwater harvesting region, I realized that there were actually many water pipes that was laid by international agency. However, these water pipes leak. You can see water splashing out. And when you turn on the tap from the public water pipe, usually the tap doesn't have any water because of two reasons. One, all the water has already been leaked before it can reach the final destination. Second, most of the time, all these water pipe was empty because they simply don't have enough money to maintain the central water purification plants. And because of the leakage and the water pipe being empty, the water pressure is very low inside. Whenever there is a vehicle going over that pipe, or when there is a construction work, the pipe easily breaks. And so it makes it even more difficult for a centralized model to work. And so they come up with a decentralized model where for each suburb community or rural or slum community, they built this mini water purification plants with world-class purification machines. So including osmosis, sedimentation, reverse osmosis, sedimentation, UV ray radiation to kill and filter out all the bacteria. And so they also price the water at a very affordable price. They price 20 liters of water at just a few, about 10 US cents. So it's very affordable for the local people. And I was helping them to replicate this model in Ghana. They first started out in India. And in this picture, you can see the water tank being opened. It's an opening ceremony in a community in Ghana. And you can see that similar to the rainwater harvesting system model, it's a collaboration across different parties. We'll be engaging the local community leaders. We'll also be engaging the government officials. We'll also be engaging people like the students and the teachers to work together to really support this model. And as I was reflecting, and this picture shows what 20 liters look like. Is a jelly can like this. It's also the size of a normal bubbler. So you can see that the model works quite well in the sense that with this huge amount of water, it only cost them 10 US cents. I was reflecting on this experience when I was working on it. And again, the same theme kinds of come up. Is the difficulty of changing human behaviors. On the right-hand side, you can see packets of water called water sachet. So it's basically a small plastic bag filled with water. And each of these are actually quite expensive. It's about 10 times more expensive, if not more, compared to this water. However, the local people still prefer this water sachet, even when the source of this water sachet water might not be actually clean. They will say that, hey, it's filtered water, but you never know for how long they have stored it, and also whether the plastic that they use is food grade and safe or not. However, you can see people drinking this water sachet and walking past the water purification station. And so again, I was reflecting on this. I was like, oh, like for this brand, Water Health International, they have international certification of the quality of water. The water is 10 times cheaper than the sachet water, but still, a lot of people still prefer sachet water. And it's the side problem is also a lot of pollution. When I was walking on the street of Ghana, the most common waste that you can see are these empty water sachet packets, and it's just floating everywhere. Yeah, I was faced with this dilemma. I wasn't able to solve this problem. They definitely do a lot of education. So like, for example, in this community photo, usually there's a booth next to it, and we'll be educating people and showing people how clean the water is, and how cheap the water is, how affordable it is. But still, this is a problem. Of course, I don't want to minimize impact, because actually there's a lot of traction as well with the water station. A lot of them is serving the community, and people who couldn't afford water sachet or are buying a lot of water sachet is gradually shifting over to a more cleaner and a more sustainable source of water as well. But the majority, mass public consumer on the streets of Ghana are still consuming water sachet. And so I finished my year-long fellowship in Ghana, and I continued on my journey. I remember it's extremely important to just look at facts, right? And to bear in mind that changing people's behaviors are very important. And so I came back to Hong Kong, and I was thinking about what should I do as a next step? And so I was kind of combining all the skill sets, all the experiences that I've experienced. I decided to start a company called Blue Sky Energy Technology. And the reason why it's called Blue Sky is because our mission is to wanting to bring blue sky back to our cities. And the technology that we use is we build data and we give people transparency to change their behavior, especially how they use energy to improve building performances. And so our mission is to create sustainable community that enable people to live healthily and be inspired with technologies, including Internet of Things sensors, data, and very user-centric focused technology. So I want to explain and I want to give you some background context in terms of why this is important. In built-up cities like Hong Kong and in most built-up cities like Singapore, Seoul, and maybe in London or other capital cities in Europe, building energy usage is one of the largest carbon emission sources. In Hong Kong, for example, about 60% of our city's carbon footprints comes from building electricity usage. So if you do the math, if we can save like maybe 20% of energy from our energy bill, it will mean a very significant, it will mean like a 6% reduction on our whole city carbon footprint. And that can really change the needle when we talk about reducing carbon emissions and halting and mitigating climate change. The second stunning fact is we spend on average over 90% of our time inside buildings. This is a research done before COVID. Right now with COVID, maybe the figure is even more than 90%, maybe it's like 95% or 100% in the case of lockdown. And so with such a significant time being spent inside buildings, it's very important for us to further optimize the performances of our building because we're using more electricity as we spend more time indoor. Previously, when 10 people or 20 people are in the same room, they can share one air conditioning system. Now, because of social distancing, maybe we have to turn on 20 air conditioning systems separately. And what's more, is also important to consider the health of the people inside the buildings. Is the air quality good, right? And so, and the hard facts that we have seen called really an urgency to do so. This is the chart from the Hong Kong Observatory, and you can see this pattern really replicating from any other cities. The blue line shows the average temperature increase over the past decade, ever since there's record from the 1800s. And the red line shows the traction in the past 10 years. And you can see that the slope, the red line slope is steeper than the blue line slope. It means that the temperature increase is accelerating. The graph on the right hand side shows the number of very hot days and the number of very hot nights in Hong Kong. And you can see that the number of very hot days have increased significantly, while the number of very cold days have decreased significantly. And so, interestingly, what that means for energy is when climate is getting hotter and hotter, energy usage also becomes higher and higher. As you can know, air conditioning is actually a heat exchange system. When the outdoor temperature is higher, it takes more energy for the air conditioning to work to provide a comfortable temperature of, say, 24 degrees Celsius for you. So it's very important in the sense that with more extreme climate, we're using more energy. With more energy, it means more carbon emissions, and it feeds into this vicious cycle of accelerating global climate change. And I remember asking a group of audiences, like well-educated audiences, do you know what 1 kilowatt hour means? What is 1 kilowatt hour? And most people actually have no concept around what 1 kilowatt hour means, but that is the major unit that is driving our cities' carbon emissions. So I figured there's a huge gap between our knowledge, our behavior, and what is at stake. And in addition, in Hong Kong, we also come across a lot of sick building syndrome effect. What it means is when you spend time inside a building, over time you start to develop some kind of discomfort, like throat irritation, feeling sick, not well. And so a lot of people report that when they spend a lot of time in buildings. Uh, and Yeah, and so I realized that we need to solve these problems. There are pain points. For example, people don't know about what energy usage means. Even if they want to know, there's no access for them. Like, like when I was studying in my university, when I was working in my office, no one ever tells me how much energy we're using, what can we do to help save energy. And there's a huge amount of admin work as well. And in terms of deployment, it's also very difficult. And so we decided to come in to build a solution that can contribute to it with three main focus: helping the building users, ensuring that the environment is sustainable, and making sure that the facilities are well maintained. To make sure that we address climate change, we make sure that the building energy usage intensity is minimum, to make sure that building users are involved, that they are healthy, that they're comfortable, but they can also take control and know how the building is performing. And at the same time, helping landlords, property owners to maintain their services and improve the cost effectiveness of their building. So there are a lot of energy management solutions out there in the market. We really try to differentiate ourselves by building our solution targeting with the end user in our mind. So we don't build the solution for engineers, for facilities managers, but we build the solutions for every occupant in a building. So right now, our users are as young as kindergarten kids to as old as elders in the elderly home. And we really try to test our product to make sure that it's something that is usable and understood by our normal daily users, because energy is used by everyone. And so far, on the right-hand side, you can see that from the latest record, I think we are saving maybe 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide right now, and planting over 20,000 trees. And we hope to continue this traction by working with our clients and improving their performances. So right now we're in about 200 locations, majority of them in Hong Kong, some of them in the rest of the cities in Asia. And we've also responded to the request and kind of the demand of the market, that people don't just want to know the energy usage information. They also want to know, what is the indoor air quality? What is the outdoor air quality? How about airflow? How about, is there any water leakage happening? So we really try to integrate different kinds of census data and provide the same user-centric solution to our buildings. And yeah, let me actually go through this quicker, because Serene, I realized that my time is coming up. So I will speed up a little bit, but we can always go back if you have more questions. So the solution spans across three areas. The first is hardware. So we install different IoT, Internet of Things sensors. And with the census data, we'll be analyzing the data real time on the cloud. And when there are abnormal situations, and when we detect that there is an opportunity to save, we'll then send messages through email or through the app to alert our end users. And the third step is we also pair the solution up with automation controls, as well as engagement program. So for example, in universities, we'll run campaigns for them. And that's how I actually get to know Davis Bohart. We have ran energy saving campaigns in HKUST to engage the students to save energy together. And yeah, and so I'd love to show you, this is the user interface that we've designed for most of our users. And you can see that in one dashboard, you'll be able to visualize by appliances, your air conditioning, your light, your socket load, how does each appliance's performance are. And we also convert kilowatt hour into something more concrete. So in terms of monetary impact, in terms of the carbon footprint, what's the equivalence of driving, the mileage, or the iPhone charges. And we also integrate other kinds of census data like indoor air quality score. We try to calculate the score and average it so that it's easy for any lay user to understand and to really work on improving their indoor air qualities. And with the abundant information, we realized that it's easy to overload users with information. And so we actually personalize some of the recommendations for our users. Whenever we detect that certain appliances usage are above a reasonable level, we'll send them recommendations that's tailored to the appliance and to their type of premises, so that they will be able to take actions and work on it before it's too late. Because traditionally they receive a bill at the end of a month, or they never receive a bill, or they couldn't tell where the increase in energy bill comes from, because it's from the whole building or from the whole floor. So we really break it down into specific appliances and into specific zones. Yeah, and I've mentioned just now that we also integrate we also worked a lot with partners, because as you can imagine, it's very hard to do, and it's impossible to do everything well. And so we worked with many different partners to provide a holistic solutions. In addition to working with David's to run campaigns in HKUST, we also work with their research team because they have developed a good model to predict outdoor air quality for each granular GPS point. And so we also take in their advice, and we alert our users whenever outdoor air quality is at risk. And we also integrate with different new types of machines like robots, so that the technology is more accessible across different platforms. And I would like to share with you some case studies that we have done. So I've mentioned HKUST. Before HKUST, we actually started out first in Hong Kong U. And in Hong Kong U, we have installed smart energy sensors into each room. So each room residents are able to see their own room, aircon, lighting, and small power load. And with their effort, they have actually saved over 300,000 kilowatt hour of energy. That's equivalent to 14% savings. And yeah, it's really exciting to see their effort. And in collaboration with the teams, we've run hackathons with them. All the data is open up to the students, so they analyze it. They also come up with initiative on campus on what they can do to further reduce and save energy. And these are some of the competitions that are being ran across the colleges, recognizing each college. And this is the program that we've run in HKUST, and I would love to show you the result. So in here, the result shows that it's a pilot that we've done, and so the results show that when people actually have access to the data, people who logged in to check their energy usage actually use 60% less than the rooms with no data. And so I think that is a very interesting phenomenon, because simply by providing data transparency to users, we can already have a significant savings. And I believe that maybe a human is at the center of the solution, because technology is there, but human behavior is what is very challenging to change. So by educating, by giving them ownership, by encouraging them, that's where the solution lies. And we also are able to capture some results from the respondents in terms of where this energy saving comes from. And so you can have a read over these comments in terms of all areas, aircon, lights, and socket. They come up with interesting ways to reduce their energy loading. And in addition to universities, we also work with property groups. So we partner up with them to work with their tenants. So this is a property group, and we work with their tenants to provide them with transparency of their own space. We recommend them on solutions and operational changes that they can do to save energy. And these group of people are actually very busy office workers. And so when I looked at this, I was also quite surprised, because I was imagining it would be very difficult to capture attention from normal office workers. So we didn't have as active of a response, definitely, compared to university engagement, but the result is also encouraging. They actually have dedicated staff and admin person to look at the data and to take action collaboratively. And in addition to retrofitting existing building, we've also tried starting last year, to integrate this into new building. And so it's exciting to be able to work on new building project as well to improve their performances. Yeah, so I know time is quite tight, so I'll just conclude here with a feedback that I remember very clearly from one of our first user in Hong Kong University. So Rachel is a student studying finance. And I still remember she told me at the beginning when we first started the project, she's like, "Oh, Christina, I think it will be very hard to engage our fellow students to save energy because they are actually paying for their own air conditioning already. They have to tap a card to pay for their own air conditioning." And so she said, "Hey, because of that, we are already pretty frugal in how we use." Um, and I was like, yeah, but let's try it. Let's see like what the data tells us. And so she made use of her financial analytics skills, and she analyzed all the air conditioning usage data across all the rooms. And she found an interesting figure. The highest use of energy in a room can be 4 times as much compared to another room. And and so she showed this data to the rest of the students, and they figure out what is the optimum setting, and 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 there are many accessories that they also pair up, including using fans, installing mosquito screens, um, to use more natural ventilation. And at the end, they save about 25% of energy. And then I realized, and then she told me at the end, and I captured it here, is I believe in the power of data to create powerful change. We didn't change any hardware, but we simply educate and provide transparency to the students, and that caused the change. So I think that is what sustains us. That is what encourages me a lot, and I still remember, what she shares. And so at the beginning, there will be a lot of skepticism. There will be areas, and a lot of areas definitely, that doesn't work. There will be a lot of glitches as well in the journey of developing the technology, of the software, and of running these engagement programs. But I think because of the cost that we start out with is something that's right. So I think that's what works. And yeah, last but not least, this is my contact. I know that you guys are young, so if you like, you can follow us on IG. We might use more Chinese, but we'll also be more international going forward. So feel free to follow us on High Blue Sky Energy, and or email me if you have any further questions beyond this section.